Everyone, welcome to the City of Daytona Beach City Commission Affordable Workforce Housing Study Workshop. Today is Wednesday, July 20th, 2022, and I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that this is a study that we've all waited for and wanted, and so let's engage in what I hope will be a healthy discussion in how we can start to move forward. Mr. Manager, I'll let you go ahead and frame the presentations.
This item you all as an organization have been asking for some time. We have Mr. Gray here from the Strategic Planning Group. I think that staff has communicated with them some of your expectations. He's here for the presentation. If it's longer than the hour, we'll make do, but Mr. Gray, you from Strategic, all right, you can go forward. You go forward with the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to try to go very over a very complicated and detailed study, which I've just read it. I hope I haven't sent it. But to do this, we had to look at a lot of detail. A lot of the data to get it and stuff. Bottom line, agenda, a little bit about your profile, the housing stock, and then we're going to get into the affordable and really get to the conclusions of the study. You may or may not know that one of these is unique. Unique for several important reasons, especially as it deals with housing. One, as you can see here, highlighted vacant housing. That means C. So basically, 20% of your housing is ergo outside of the normal market itself. You also are a entertainment area because of the beach. Again, counting a little bit of the sea, you get the tourism point. Large service entertainment component to it, more than anybody else by far in the process. Actually, which a lot of people don't realize, you are a university town. You have a lot of students, and even though the things are getting better, i.e. they're building dorms, they have historically absorbed a lot of the rental housing, and they will tend to rent higher rents than the normal population. Affordable housing in and of themselves. Basically, as you can see here, you're dealing with this is important to understand. This is your median income, and this is going to be a little complicated, but this is your numbers, Daytona Beach, based on census. And the starting point of this was numbers. You can see occupied housing, median, i.e. the halfway part. Your occupied owner is 51,000. Your renter is 31,000. Huge difference. So income between renters and owners. Or apparently we break that down. Estimates. Median income was $40,000. If you look at families, it goes up to $55,000. And if you go up to married, it's almost $70,000. Those that are not family, have to be mindful of this. Housing stock and what needs are. Cohorts. Housing types. Probably know this, but I didn't. You are still right now predominantly renter of your homes are rented versus ownership, and that's sort of reverse most other communities. Why? Again, it's that uniqueness that 8% of your occupied units, owner occupied, go down. There is 25%, almost 26% trend. You're getting buyers coming in, selling units, they rent them now. So they're taking them off the market in an ownership and put them back in rental. That is typical, again, what's happening. However, if you look down, you have roughly 5% of your renters are in apartments, multifamily apartments. Again, not a dissimilar to national. This, I showed you this last year. It's changed a little bit from the numbers from last year. It's gotten worse. We have roughly 50,600, I think, 100 jobs within the city. Those are actual jobs within the boundaries of the city. We have roughly 27,000 within the city itself that are living here. 42,000 people from outside the city come to work. 300 live and work within the city. 16.4%. 15,000 people that are employed and have jobs that leave the city every day. Very dynamic in terms of what's happening and raising the question, what are we doing with policy? Now, of the residents, where do they go to work? That 18,000 that leaves, predominantly 62% stay within the county. But look what happens. You have Orange County, Duval, and just spreads all the way around with the 19. So you have people that literally work here, leave in that type. And some of them it's significantly over an hour drive plus. What about the job holders, the other side of the coin? Of the people that work here, where do they live? Well, 65% still live within Volusia County. Flagler's the next, coming down to distribution. Now, one thing, and again, we think this, there's no way to truly document that, but that 12.5% down where it says other locations, we think a good portion of this is a reflection of the college students. They take jobs and stuff, and so they're going to be reported where they were on April 1st and the like. Okay? So again, we think that is a distortion somewhat caused by college students. Okay, this is refreshing, again, the work we just showed you. 50,800 jobs, only 16.4% are coming in from the city itself. Of the 26,600 people, job holders that live within the city, only 83 or 31% come from the city. So again, they're coming for jobs, but they're leaving significantly. And the question, we'll go into that. The question and answer is why. Okay, the other thing on the other side of the coin is, unfortunately, you have over 50-some-odd% of your labor force is in low-paying jobs. As witnessed by, again, what I was saying earlier, your retail trade, tourism, accommodation and hotel. And this is deceiving because the next one, healthcare and social. A lot of people will sit there and immediately think, well, that's good pay. It isn't. Doctors represent a very small percentage of that. Techs that work in hospitals, nurses and the like, that are in that workforce housing need. So if you really look at the median salary, it's low. So basically, you have 50-some odd percent of your workers that work within the city are low-income workers, presenting, again, and then anecdotal information as to saying, you know, do we need workforce affordable housing? I know the question came up in, I think, our last meeting was, how much housing do we have? Are we the recipient of the need for affordable housing here? The answer ultimately is no, for two reasons. One, 50% of your housing is over 50 years old, functionally obsolete. 71% are 40 years or older. Now, the other side of the coin is, if a site is, or a home is occupied, it's not available. It's not an available affordable housing unit without displacing them and doing it. It is a source in the future of trying to figure out how you renovate some of these to make them a quality development. But if you're looking to answer that question, how many affordable units do you really have? You don't have, it's not zero, because you can't play that game. There always are some, but according to the census anyway, vacancy rates, you're within the normal quick turnaround. So that would sit there and say zero. Plus, if I look at the county, I see the same statistics. So it's not like somebody from outside of Daytona has moved here because of the price of housing. That is not the case. Okay, now let's get into a crazy definition, because we've now switched to definitions of affordable. What do I mean by affordable? Federal government says you should not pay more than 30% of your household income on housing, including utilities. So that's the definition that we will all work on. Severe, that's where it should stop, but unfortunately it doesn't. Severe is 50% or more. I'm going to deal with just 30 to 35% here. That is, again, the standard which everybody, your grants, everything operate. Now, I do want to inject one idea. When you're dealing with HUD, you're dealing with their definition of the regional median income, family income. It's called the AMI. For Volusia County today, it's $65,400. Or comparable, or the one we're put in the book that we think you should be using, which is your household, Daytona Beach household number, is 44. That is a disadvantage to you, because if I am doing a program like HUD and saying, okay, build units that fit the low, moderate levels, that number is a lot higher, which means your people could not get into those units because the prices are going to be too high, because they're fitting a group that earns almost 30% more into the process. So that's what makes, again, this unique. Okay, cost burden definitions. 38% of your owner-occupied housing with a mortgage are cost burden. Okay? Need. I was surprised on this. You basically have 16% that even have mortgages are cost burden. But I'm not, because the advantage of buying a house, you do get tax benefits and other things. So when I'm buying a house, if I'm smart, and most people are, you're going to try to max out your affordability. You're going to buy as much as you possibly can, because you're going to, well, at least until something happens recently, you're thinking the house is going to appreciate, and you're going to build value. So you have to be careful on that. So we focus in on, again, the 38% here. Every study we've been part of and national studies show that the real issue is renters. We started after the last recession from being the American dream ownership to a new paradigm, which is rental. I can get into a lot of reasons why, but it's not just the availability, it's lifestyle. There's a lot of factors that are now going into it. Look at this. 60% of your households that are renters are cost burden, and it's getting worse. That's significant because they're not getting tax benefits, that's to cover their roof and whatever lifestyle they may desire to have. So, the first question you guys asked me, is there a need? Unequivocally, there is a need. 38% of your mortgages are cost burden, 60% of your renters are cost burden. Those are people today. That's not factoring in where, as you grow, where they will come from. Now, I'm hoping as you grow, we're going to have a little different scenario where people coming in are earning more and can afford more. Housing stock itself might be, depending upon what strategies used at the county level, which was last night, or you do, you're ahead of the county in terms of the process. Okay. The question ultimately came also was, is there a gap? In other words, again, looking at Daytona Beach, do you have a surplus? Are you, again, the recipient of the need? And this is, the state of Florida did a study that basically looked and said that as long as you're dealing with really 60% and below, there's a major problem. 60 to 120, or workforce housing, which is what we're really doing, it's not quite as severe, but it's getting there. It's still negative in terms of the process. But based on the county numbers, we're basically showing, I want to say roughly 11,000, well, 6,600 unit deficit. The county is picking up 11,000 deficit. But again, that deficit was based on 0, I think, to 50% median income. Who needs it?
But can you go back to that number again? I think I misunderstood something.
This is not additive, okay? So at 0 to 30 in terms of need, because the numbers are smaller, in terms of the number of households, there's a deficit of 11,000. If I move that up, it's still the same base, but if I now increase it to 40%, I now pick up 13, almost 14,000. Again, why? I'm dealing with a bigger number. There are more people within that cohort, okay? If I deal with 0 to 50, again, I get up to 16, and I peaked. And it starts falling to the point where I'm at the 120 level. Again, of county numbers. Okay, this is based upon that 65.4 figure. At that level, which would be in the 80,000 range, we're saying that the market can do that, and it can. That's what we call market rate housing. In between the 120 and the 60 is no man's land. That's where we need it. That's the working force. That's where the majority of our households are, and they're the ones. There was just a report on the Wall Street Journal yesterday. People could put up with, and I shouldn't say this, substandard housing and the like until it hit the middle class, and now the middle class can't find housing. It's an endemic to the United States right now, and again, it's worse here only because your salary level is lower, your median household values are lower. Again, all the federal programs there work against you, not for you, citizens. Again, as I'm saying, what is workforce? Your residents, your working people, the vast majority of your jobs. Okay, again, I mentioned this at the study, we had to define something, and we all agreed that basically we are defining workforce i.e. the numbers we're going to be generating, are household incomes 60 to 120 of the city's median, which we up to 2002, which is roughly $44,000 against 65 for HUD. Okay? Big difference. Again, we have the 44,491. And again, median, I want to stress, is that's a great little number. That means 50% are below that and in need. We worked up an analysis, and I want to show you this, especially things that changed recently with inflation. And I want to show you a little bit what that impact is. A typical model is based on 10% down payment, cost burden 30, interest rate. And this is what we did last go around, 4.5. Again, that's somebody that doesn't have the best of credit. 50% utilities, taxes, 20, and other burdens of 12%. Typical family household. I shouldn't say family, a typical household. At the median level, they can afford to rent $945. When we did our study, the median was at $1,400. Okay? Or to buy a house at roughly $201,000. What happens when it hits 6.5? It's stabilized a little bit. It's going to get there, probably within the next few months. That same, haven't changed the rent, but now I can only afford $160,000. I just lost $40,000 worth of potential buying power. Significant. Okay, and this is what I want to say down here. If you look at 1%, which is what we refer to in economics as basis points, 100 basis points changes, every change, up and down, 10% of the value of whatever it is, the house you want to buy or own. People don't realize the most significant cost as we move into the future is not land, it's not labor, it's not material, it's inflation, it's the interest rate. And that's what we did if we go back to the last major recession that we had. That was the cause of it. Remember, my first house that I bought at 16%. It's like using your MasterCard to buy. So be careful as we think into the future on these things, because we're going to be developing, hopefully, policy that isn't just today. It moves and is flexible to move into the future. But anyway, this basically shows the gaps. At 4.25, we had a gap, again, from the current market of a two-bedroom of $455 a month. If I take a townhouse condominium, I had a $98,000 gap based on Daytona households. And the current single family, $144,000. Okay? Look what changes. Right now, the way we are, we're at about 5.5, so you can take the middle point with no change. So I guess what I'm trying to say, since we made the report, the draft report, things have gotten worse. Okay. This set out to be a workforce housing study, which we basically give you in the report a lot of data. It also is wanted to look at a linkage fee. Linkage fee. It's caused by, if I have market rate units, what do? I have to have somebody to build them. When they occupy them, I have to build service, the salon and all the things, the grocers, etc. They generate a need. So we call that market grade residential impacts. And guess what? The jobs where people are going in actually are caused by the commercial, non-residential users. If you build only retail and only employ retail and the retail isn't paid enough, we have a definite demand for affordable housing. he does is it says basically, is there a legal, nationally recognized, recognized nexus or connection between market grade and the need for affordable housing? Is there a rational linkage between non-residential development and the need for affordable housing? The answer to most of that is, in the study as we've showed, is yes. Basically, I'm going to sidestep 90% of that report that you saw, which is the justification of what I just said. And we basically have come up with that on the market grade approach, we basically have two standards. We have tried to be, throughout the study, be what I call conservative, to be on the lower, not the higher rate. And basically, the two techniques that we use vary from $26 to $10.6 a square foot. That would be a reasonable linkage fee. On non-residential, it ranges between $10 and $15. And what we're saying there, and in both cases, if you decide to go down that route, make sure on day one it is tied to something like CPI or whatever, as we just envision what's happening with inflation. So we want that thing, before you change it and restudy it, that it can evolve in and of itself so you don't get shortchanged in the process. Basically, this basically was how we looked at non-residential. We looked at things like MLS data. We looked at new construction. We combined them. And this is basically the industrial results. We're basically saying industrial land, $7.22, commercial land, $21.26, office, $23.35, hotel, $12.45, and limited, $123. One of the people, I've had somebody ask me a question, why is hotel a little bit lower? Only because now we're already seeing the effect that there are fewer employees now than there were before, because of a lot of reasons. So the impact is less than it was, let's say, 5 years ago. Okay. What we're saying here, and I don't like the workforce, you just take the workforce out of that. We're saying that there should be a goal. SPG, not you. You need to find that goal. We're saying a goal with 1,500 units being built a year. If you had 1,500 residential units built, and you averaged them out at 14, what do I mean by average? Rental, ownership. Apartments, about 900, 1,800 for ownership, housing as an average. Merge them, average is 14, 10-year, you have a potential revenue stream that would generate $18.2 million. Residential potential, probably a little aggressive given what we're probably entering in a recession, but it's still going to be at least half that. 3 million, potential 71. If you want to be ultra conservative, probably 30 million would be for the next 10 years type of deal. So that gives you what a revenue stream could potentially be if you do a linkage fee. Okay, we all know the battles that happened with 7103, which made the statement that a developer needs to be made whole. And what is it, 1339, which allows now affordable housing in all zones, all land use zones. Well, it's paying Peter to pay Paul to a certain degree. For the first time, unless you had mandatory inclusionary zoning, affordable housing wasn't truly being built. Project here, project there, not much. There just was no demand from the supplier side to build them. This way, when you do linkage fee, you know there's money coming in to something, and that's called a trust fund, that then can be truly used to build and or supply down payment assistance or other things that you can actually truly address the affordability issue, the workforce ability issue. But without the dollars, we're not going anywhere. So what this did is saying, okay, it's not costing the developer, we're going to make them whole, but we do in fact get monies through that process, paper process. Doesn't cost you anything, reduction in parking. It doesn't cost you anything in expedited permitting. So these are things that can be done from a governmental policy standpoint that actually do generate the dollars that can be applied in brick and mortar. So it's game, I don't think so. It's truly a way to generate dollars that hasn't been there before. Now, what do we mean by whole? Who I dealt with, but I was shocked on larger scale projects. The number one is expedited permitting. I've always heard it said, but I had not seen it documented. Again, time is money. It really is, and it's significant. It's probably the number one on anything that's a quasi-major project. Significant cost savings. Density bonuses. If you give them a bonus, and usually it's 2 for 1, so if you wanted to have a effective, let's say 2% inclusionary type of concept that you want to increase the density that will result in 2% affordable housing, workforce housing, you usually give 4% in terms to the developer. Okay? By doing that, he's whole. He's covered the cost, a good portion of the cost of the land, because you've now given him the ability on the same costs of the land, more units. So there are all sorts of ways to look at density, flexible design standards, the ability to put more units on an existing lot. Things again, it affects to a large degree the land cost. Variances, setback requirements, etc., has to be looked at in detail. But again, how much of that is really needed if in fact you're truly getting affordable housing? There are flexible ways to achieve the desired end that don't cost. Accelerated approvals we talked about, reduced impact fees. Remember, some impact fees are tied to bonded issues, even utilities. The nice thing about having a trust fund is you can still do that, and the trust fund, which they're paying into, can cover any cost that is not being done. So it's a very unique way of dealing with it. Again, you're really doing this. We developed the one for Ormond Beach, which was called a GAP. It was a guaranteed adjustment. And basically we're saying we wanted economic development. In this case, we also want market grade housing. You can sit there and say, okay, we're going to give you 20% return on your property tax and phase it over 5 years or 10 years. That's real money. And how do you cover it? It's covered in trust fund. But it's a real life capability. Their internal rate of return of their program up there is over 150%. It's huge, both in saving companies that are there, but actually bringing companies in. That was incentive enough for them to locate. So anyway, these are just some of the ones. Now, how would you actually implement that? You're going to implement that by when the developer comes in because of, again, state law. We work out the program and they tell us what are the things we have to do to get you at this value. There's no way to define it like we do transportation. We do, and once they say they're whole, no matter what. They're legally whole. So it can be done. It's new in terms, Florida is the first one ever to do this. But I can tell you right now, it's doable and it can work. We have all these tools. Affordable housing. Now they address affordable below 60, but they also address 60 to 120. These are all things that you can look at and decide. Now, one of the positive things, you may not know this, but the state legislature just increased the Sikowski for the first time. We are not rating it anymore. So for the first time, we're getting significant dollars coming in the SHIP. That's really going to help that below 60, significant dollars. So again, we're focusing on workforce, so that wouldn't help us per se, okay? Significant to the entire picture. But these are things that we need to look at, and you all decide which ones you want to use. Not all of them, which ones. Inclusionary zoning, I'm just bringing that up because it's still there. It can still be mandatory. The only difference now, you have to make them whole. But again, if you force it and say you have to do 10% or 15%, like Palm Beach County and others, it's worked. We did the first one in the state of Florida with a Nexus fee. It was tied to that in Coconut Creek. And these are, most Florida cities have 10 to 15% setback, requirements. It's basically said, if you build over X number of units, let's say 10, you have to have 1.5 rounded up. It's how you make them whole, density, any of those things. Result, actual construction. And we also have your document in the appendix. There are lots of tools that nobody's using that we can draw upon. It's going to differ city by city, county by county. Everybody's different in terms of what they can do and what they can't do and the like, but they're there. And again, that's ways that I'm saying to mitigate the issue. It doesn't get away from the problem, and the problem is we need more workforce housing units. Harvard University just got finished doing their annual report. Because of where we are today, we haven't built enough housing. We're somewhere in the area of about 4 million units short. Demand exceeds supply. What happens? So again, we need to have units built, and we need to have better income. Remember, please, why we're doing this. It has its effect. Daytona Beach, revitalizing old neighborhoods and the like. That would be an effect of the policy. Directing economic benefits, increase jobs and salaries. Income increases. You know that for a fact. Reduce long distance. You have a tremendous out-commute pattern and in-commute. That's affecting your roads. If you can do anything to shorten that, that's a significant impact and a dollar impact. And we know without a doubt now, the American Planning Association has now unequivocally said housing and health go together. Period. The next steps, and now I want to get into question and answers. The first thing you got to do is approve the report, if you want to. Hopefully you will. Second, create a housing trust fund immediately. You don't have to load it, but you got to have it there as a potential tool. It won't cost you anything, but as soon as you have it, you have the ability to then figure out what you want to load into it, without a doubt. An implementation program. We've given you an overview, if you will, of your market, the various components of it, and the linkage fee concepts and other tools that can do that. Now, after you've approved the stuff, you need to sit down and actually pick out which ones and change what wording we want to have and all the things that will go to actually truly implement. And I want you to know we're available to help you. We would love to be able to help you and continue on with the work to do that, but that's critical. Once you've laid down the vision and the numbers that we have, you have to implement it in a lot more detail than what the county's doing on their plan that they approved yesterday. And I'm using this just as a way to keep that alive and well. You are tourism capital of Volusia County. Okay? There is a lot of money that goes into bed tax. We have a problem with funding retail entertainment people, i.e. affordable housing needs. There is no reason, you have a justification, it's easily shown, that you should be getting some, not all, some, whether it's 10% or whatever, of the tourism bed tax to go toward affordable housing. Because it's directly linked to increased tourism. No. So anyway, that's it. I'm available for questions and answers. Excuse me?
What is P3 on your workforce housing?
Private partnerships, public-private partnerships.
So is there a standard by other communities where there's an allocation of tourism bed tax to a trust fund for affordable housing? Is there
California, Colorado and stuff have done that. I don't know of anybody in Florida. And I'm going to be honest with you, and I think you all know that. In Florida, we have different agencies which we've been planning in economics called silos. They're sort of operate by themselves and do, one, don't talk to anybody else, but definitely don't tread on my dollars. And I happen to know for a fact that because we did your economic development thing for the county a few years ago, that exists here. And there'll be a fight. But I'm trying to say is, you, not the county, you have the fight. Because you have the end result. You have the jobs, the need for housing. And they are linked. And they are capital linked, which justifies the use of bed tax. When we were doing the study, we were trying to figure out, let's wait for 2 years and 3 years or 4 years down the line. Aren't there things we could perhaps do immediately? And politically, that's great for you guys to be able to do that. Just trying to say is that was our goal.
It's also a benefit to the employers, the hotels and the restaurants who pay into that, hotels specifically, for their employees to have a place to live that's close in
Every
proximity.
one of them are hurting right now. They don't have the workforce. Why don't they have the workforce? People can't afford to work there. It's not simple economics.
Questions?
Solution is one that you adopt the plan and then move forward with the trust fund and then implementing the plan.
How long does it typically take for a trust fund to get implemented?
Month, 2 months, nothing. It's an ordinance. You just establish it and your lawyer, your legal department can do it. It's not a big thing.
Mr. Manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if the commissioners tonight adopt the plan, Director King Thomas and the Deputy City Manager Jim Morris will be the responsible entities. Attorney Jagger or a staff member attorney. So if you all adopt this and want us to implement this plan, those key leaders from the city staff will bring back this plan for the city of Daytona Beach.
Been waiting to adopt it for years, way before it came, so way before we did it. So first and foremost, we're glad to have it. It's way overdue, but we're glad to have it. I'm supportive of adopting it, and I'm certainly supportive of moving forward expeditiously with because we have people that can't wait.
Can I add a couple of points to, again, sow the seed a little bit? You've been progressive that you put under legislation to do ADUs, okay? ADUs nationally are the #1 solution to affordable, in that 60 below type of deal. there's a problem, and we'd love to be able to help you with that one. The problem right now is financing. It's not that people don't want to do it. There's some issues, again, with permitting and how you do it. The real issue is, how does an owner finance that $100,000 improvement? And there's some progress being made. The Feds just made a statement, and the President's made a statement that they're going to try to work with the GSEs, the Freddie Mac, and all those to come up with ways. Those are things that we would like to be able to sit down with your staff and stuff to implement.
That would be up to the manager if he felt the need for that, and he would make that decision, he and his staff. As far as the study, are you all in agreement with accepting it and moving forward? I mean, I've spoken.
Yes, I would like to read it a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm just ready to do it because I'm ready to do it, but I understand that I don't ever want you to.
Right,
we
I
should,
mean, I
yeah.
just don't want to.
Okay. Just want to get a sentiment of where you all are. Okay. Are there any questions, or is there any obstinance? There seems to be some form of silence. We've waited on this, so I want to make sure that we're still aligned. We've been aligned on affordable as our most important issue, and it has not. It has only gotten worse. Yes, Commissioner Strickland.
You just mentioned ADUs. Is there anything, if we allow more ADUs, push forward to that, to keep those ADUs from turning into short-term rentals so that we still don't end up in the same spot with no affordable housing?
They're not.
Well, they're not short-term rentals.
No, ADUs are not. I mean, but you put them behind the house. People come in and invest in that property. It has that behind there. Not necessarily the person that originally builds it, but the next buyer. How do you stop them from turning that into a short-term rental
You can do age restriction.
in the future?
Then our land development goes.
Still got a lot of those illegal short-term rentals going right now that shouldn't be there, but.
Well, then what we do, all we can do is whatever enforcement measures we have in place
Right.
to fix it. But we're not going to legalize it or make it where, it's easier for them to do it by.
Well, I understand. People obviously don't care about what our rules are because we have that going on right now, right under our noses, and have had for years. But our code people are kind of overworked already. We might need to, in the future, another person or two just to keep up with that.
We've done it almost. Elected in this position, that was the first thing we did, and we continually need to keep doing it because code is only growing, and it's in the budget. Yes, ma'am.
So we've expanded already our ADUs. It's already a citywide concept,
Correct.
right? Anybody can do it here. I would like to know how many people have actually taken us up on that and gone ahead and gotten the permitting for it so that we can see kind of how it's moving.
I'm not sure how you are here, but having dealed with this nationally,
So has it improved the affordable housing
it's
situation?
improved where communities have a funding source. Now, remember what it's meant to be. It's meant to be an existing owner, and it really is beneficial from two sides. I just want to sell it for a second and then come back in. The selling feature is it actually is an income generator for the main house, and usually because of the design of it, it tends to be more senior population which needs the money. So it helps them. On the other side, it is affordable housing. Okay, now, there have been studies up the yin-yang that basically they're showing is the reason why it isn't more effective everywhere, this wouldn't be Florida, is that how do you fund it? Let's assume you've got the legislation and it's fairly easy to get through the regulatory process. The real issue is how do you fund it? Other communities have worked with it to the idea, much like community development corporations and stuff, they work with the banks, if they understand it. It's part education, but again, the Workforce Housing Trust Fund can pop in. But the real issue, again, I want to say if you look at everything and you keep coming back to it, it's dollar signs that.
Well, I think there are ways to get it funded, but our first process is, I think that's a good idea. And I think that's something that we can come back to later. But for the purposes of what we're doing tonight, commissioners asked for another commission meeting. We need to be able to come back and approve this at the next meeting. If not, we got to send it all the way back to the drawing board and do this again. I'm hell-bent on not doing that.
And so are we saying that we're looking, and I agree with you, just take a little time to go over this again, but are we saying that you're wanting us to approve the linkage fee concept, or just approve the information in here? Where are we with it?
If I may, the linkage fee concept is going to require quite a lot of work,
Okay.
substantial amendment to your code, and I do have a question for you. I assume that this would conclude Mr. Gray's work on the study, and I would like some direction from the commission as to whether we'd want to continue to retain Mr. Gray to help us implement a linkage program, if you will, through our code. I think it'd be helpful personally if you were able to look over our drafts to make sure that we're meeting his study data.
Okay. I want to be clear that we're not voting from a preliminary perspective of this conversation. I've stated that I'm in favor of moving this forward. Okay? I need to know, I don't know, I've had this a little while now. Do we have other people who are in that alignment, or are you dead unaligned? Forward.
Study that's been presented to
Correct.
us. And then we need to work through what the study has provided us.
No, but we need to be prepared to come back and ask the staff to move forward. And then what we're going to do is ask that whether we want to extend his work. But first, we need to have a preliminary understanding of, are we aligned and moving in the same direction, or is this something that we need a lot of discussion on? I'm telling you where I stand. I just need to know, do we have 4 other people who, this is an important process to achieve our goal. This is not,
It is an important process. I would like to study it a little bit more and come back and actually brainstorm and know exactly what
Right,
I'm
now,
doing.
we can't really approve anything at a workshop. We don't take public comments. We'll have to come back if you're going to formally approve the report. We'll need to do that at a public meeting.
I'm aware of that. Okay. Very much aware of that. But we're here for a discussion. We sort of need to know. We've had it. We got to.
We'll be ready. I'll be ready. I'll be
Okay.
ready. I mean, I need to
Objectives, what does that mean? It means we go back to the drawing board and send somebody else back, and we continue with the same data and come back with the same data.
My goal just was tonight to have some form of consensus, so just start thinking about moving forward. That's all we need. We'll bring it back to you all. Accept the report, but I definitely hear what you want. We're not trying to get a direction to go forward, but we'll bring something back at the next meeting to say, that will say, approve this report or not. But if there's some type of consensus, guys, yes, let's look at it. I want to just release them to just start thinking about how we move on.
I just want to be able to look at it and ask more questions. I have your card, or
Yeah.
staff.
I think you're on the right track.
I would add to that at some point, entering into another agreement with Mr. Gray to continue his consulting services with regard to implementing the program.
Well, I would expect that the next meeting when we vote on this, that we're able to make that decision. Okay. So if you need to reach out to him between now and then, that's fine. But
Thank you.
all right. Do we have any other questions or comments from you all? Commissioner Traeger?
ought to do, I think we ought to do the right thing and study it a little bit and then come back. But I definitely think this looks like it might be workable for us.
We have all these tools, some of which I know we're already using right now. I just want to know how successful existing tools are right now. That's kind of what I'm curious about. To know how many homes we're doing right now with our SHIP. I just want some, this is the toolkit. Like, have we explored everything in our toolkit successfully yet? I'm curious about that. Mandatory linkage or mandatory linkage? I'm just, because that's two different
That's what you have to
wings.
decide.
That's two.
The report gives you a range to choose. It's not saying pick any one of those, including the dollars and it's giving you.
See, the report basically just gives us the capacity to work on these things.
Right. It
And
gives you the
I'm not here to make the decision, but I'm ready to say that, to do something. And I've been waiting on this for 2 years for us to be able, more than that, to be able to do something. And we've been sitting here like this here handcuffed. And I'm ready to get this off.
I have another question.
Holding this up inhibits that.
Actually, I do have a couple of questions. I wanted to read this over a little bit more, but I just want your opinion on something. This adaptive reuse, how successful is it? The adaptive reuse, how successful is it? It's one of the tools here. Adaptive reuse zoning, are people using it well? Is it succeeding?
People use it, it only produces a very tiny impact. Okay? It's a tool in the equivalent of arrows you have, type of deal.
And then from your experience, what of the tools that you've experienced, just your personal experience, seems to be the most effective toward hitting a dent, or is it multiple things at one time?
You must answer and then substitute things that have unfortunately changed, which I think, like people, I think it may be actually advantageous.
That's not what I want. Commissioner,
ADUs, yes.
okay, for the purposes of this meeting, we're going to allow you to have the private discussion.
Oh, okay.
So we can go ahead and conclude this meeting.
All right,
Okay.
no problem.
Have a good comment, sir?
No, we're ready.
Okay. All right, so they'll be ready to make recommendations. We all have your card. I read this. I don't have any questions myself. I'm ready to go. This meeting is adjourned.
Super, thanks. Can you,